Hello, good morning, everybody. Few more participants are joining, and we will be beginning the session in a couple of minutes. So if you want to quickly grab your notepads and pen and paper, you can do that now because we will be giving away a lot of information in terms of scoring, section-wise, the timings available in each section, and etc. So if you want to grab your notepads, this is the time. And as we progress into the webinar for the next 35-40 minutes, you will have a lot of questions, so you can make a note of it, and towards the end, you can ask that to us. So it's 10:01. We'll be starting at 10:03. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the session on SAT Under the Microscope. My name is Rishi, and I will be your host for this morning's session. I have with me my colleague and co-founder of Revisor. He's an expert in math section of the SAT, and he has trained thousands of students in the last 5 years. And he has helped a lot of students achieve 800 on 800 in the math section as well. And we are very proud to share that in the last quarter of 2020, when the SATs were resumed in terms of conducting the test and sharing the scores, we have a perfect 800 on 800 in English as well. So these are the few highlights to begin with. And in today's session, we will be focusing on 6 important components of understanding the SAT. We will go through the entire test framework. What are the components? What are the sections? Number of questions, number of passages, number of questions in no calculator and calculator sections of the math part. So that is the framework of the test. Very important to understand if you are preparing and strategizing for a successful SAT. So we will also be focusing on how does SAT essay test you and how to prepare for it. What are the scoring pattern? How many people score your essay? And how the final report is given. And we will also be discussing about how the score submission of the SAT works and why and how is SAT different from other competitive tests. We will understand that. And we will be, of course, getting a few expert tips from Rajdeep on how to ace it. Having 1590 now turning into a common score for Rajdeep, we will hear from the expert himself how to get something similar for you as well. Before I hand over the session to Rajdeep, I want to have a quick recap of what was the past webinar and what did we understand and what is the next set of action that we'll be doing in connection with today's webinar. So first question to understand, why do we have to take SAT? Today on this webinar, I have registrations from over 65 to 70 different participants from different curriculum and different background. For example, I have a CBSE student, I have an ICSE student, I have an IG as well as an IB student. So ask yourself, if you are the admissions officer and all of these 4 different curriculums, it can be even state board, they all submit the score to you and they say that, you know what, I have 90% in my high school at an average. Which one will you take it at the face value? So you want a leveler. SAT acts as a leveler, and it also tries to measure you how prepared are you for college. So that is the reason why a student takes SAT. in grade 11. We will understand the timeline and rest of the things. One more quick introduction in 60 seconds about Reviser, and then I will hand over the session to Rajdeep. Can we go to the next slide, please? Reviser started off in 2015 by Rajdeep. He's a BITS Pilani alumni and an expert in SAT, ACT, and PSAT test prep. We also support students with subject SAT preparations. We are also experts with advanced placement test, or also known as AP test. We support students starting from grade 9 to grade 12 with their test prep requirement, and we are quite proud about our results. So from here on, I will hand over the session to Rajdeep. I will reconnect with you towards the end regarding your Q&A. Please note every question. No question is small or big. Note every question. Towards the end, we have parked 15 minutes just to answer each one of you, and we'll be reading out the question from the comment section. Thank you so much. Over to you, Rajdeep.
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. Good morning, everyone. This is Rajdeep, co-founder and CEO of Reviser. And here are some of our top performers in the last academic year. These are few students who have gone to different universities. In the last 5 years, we have trained more than 3,000 plus students, and we have pretty much covered we have sent students to almost all the Ivy League universities. At the same point of time, I think our focus has always been, and our motto has always been, that we want to take every child, we want to help every child to reach their potential. And every child has a different potential, right? It doesn't matter whether it's 1590 or a 1480. It depends on that child's potential. And our focus has always been to make sure that from the point they start, there should be a decent improvement by the time they finally reach to a score. Here you're seeing a couple of the top scores in the last academic year. And this year we have 2 more 1590s and 3 more 36 on 36. You could also see Anjali here doing both SAT 1580 and 36 on 36. It's the same girl. She has gone to Princeton. The reason of putting this slide here, Anjali's name at 2 places, was I just wanted to showcase that there are students who would write both SAT and ACT. And there are some students who would be very clear from day one that they want to just write the SAT or the ACT. And hence, it's really important for one to understand which is the best suited test for their child. As Rishi already mentioned, there are students which are coming from different curriculum background. You could be a CBSE, ICSE, IB, A-level, PU board, or any other board for that matter, right? It's important to figure out what's your strength and play with those strengths, right? In today's webinar, we are going to deep dive into the SAT per se, but we will also announce a couple of other webinars which will walk you through what the ACTs are, what subject ACTs are, what APs are. Please do come and attend these webinars just for the information's sake to try and understand what these tests are about. From here on, I would be giving a lot of information. Feel free to please write those down. At the end of the session, we are going to take all your questions. Feel free to put it on the chat straight away, but we would be only taking those questions towards the end. And if you want to ask only towards the end, that's completely fine. With that, let me deep dive into the SAT test framework first. So it's a 3-hour, 50-minute test. 3 hours for the actual exam, and then another 50 hours for the essay section. There are a total of 5 sections in this exam. They are largely testing a general aptitude test in verbal and quantitative reasoning. You could call it as pure maths and English. It's required for most of the US colleges. Having said that, it also helps in most of the other geographies as well. If you guys are aware, and if you had maybe an elder kid, you would have noticed after 2015, SAT has changed their pattern. Right? Now they are more aligned towards your high school curriculum. That's one. And the reason why they conduct this test, obviously, as Rishi mentioned, it's a leveler, right? Since you're coming from different background in terms of curriculum that you have done, this acts as a leveler. And at the same point of time, it helps college to understand whether the child is ready to go to a foreign university and basically study based on the curriculum that they have, right? So they are testing you what you need to succeed in college, right? Do you have what is being required for you to be successful when you go to a perfect college? Now, let's look at the individual section time. The first section in the SAT is reading section, which is for 65 minutes, and you have a total of 52 questions. And you're being scored anywhere between 100 to 400 points, 100 being the lowest, 400 being the highest. The second section in SAT is writing and language section, which is 35 minutes. total of 44 questions. And again, minimum being 100, maximum is 400. That's how the English section, which is a combination of reading and writing section, is out of 800 points. Then comes the math section, and maths is further divided into calculator and no calculator. When we deep dive individually into individual sections, I'm going to take that in detail. But in total, you have about 80 minutes and you have a total of 58 questions. And there, the scoring is between 200 to 800. So lowest being 200 and highest being the 800. So that makes it total of 1600. So minimum that one can score is 400 points and maximum that one can score is 1600 points. So in totality, if you look at it, it's a total of about 180 minutes with a total of 154 questions and scoring with of total of 1600 points. In addition to that, they have a component which is essay component, but that's an optional component as well, which is for 50 minutes. So how what happens is, for example, if you get to exam hall and if you have not registered for the essay component, there's a break of 10 minutes right after 180 minutes. So if you want to leave, you could leave the exam hall. But if you have registered for the essay, you guys will stay there and the kids will write the exam, which is for another 50 minutes. They will have one essay prompt. And again, we will deep dive into how that works. In terms of scoring, they could get anywhere between 6 points to 24 points, 24 being the highest, 6 being the lowest. So that's how in totality, how the scoring works, the number of questions and the time being allotted for individual sections. If you look at it, by and large, the total time for the English and math is pretty much the same. Now let's deep dive into individual sections with that. As I said, the first section in the SAT is the reading section. There are a total of 52 questions, 65 minutes in total, and there are a total of 5 passages. So what you're doing here is the child is basically reading 5 different passages and they're answering questions related to those passages. And a lot of us call it as regular reading comprehension thing, right? So this is very similar to the reading comprehension. You're reading the passages, answering the question. Total of 5 passages. They're further subdivided into 2 categories. There are a total of 4 passages which are individual passage. And then there is one passage which we call it as dual passage or paired passage. That means basically there could be 2 different authors who are presenting their viewpoint about a single topic. For example, let me take an example of black hole, right? So they could be talking about black hole and 2 different people might have 2 different perspectives. So obviously this is a lengthy passage and there are techniques and strategies that one needs to adopt to answer this passage. Now in totality, if you look at it, there is roughly about 13 minutes per passage that you have, in which you have to read the passage and also answer about 10 to 11 questions. So in total, you have about 1 minute, 15 seconds. So 75 seconds in total to read and answer the question together, right? So it is a time crunch exam and you have to be really good at reading if you want to ace this section. Trust me, this is one of the most difficult sections for Asian kids. I would probably not say because of the student. I think it's largely because of the curriculum and the way we've been taught in our Indian curriculum or in Indian schools, whether it's IB or IG as well. Now, let me look at the next thing. When I say there are 5 passages, now these 5 passages can be further divided into 3 broad categories. The first one is US and world literature. You will always see one passage with 10 questions, which will always be based on US and world literature. Then there are 2 passages which are from history or social studies. And then there are 2 passages which are from the science related passage. Now, out of these 4 passages which are from history or social science, there could be one passage which will be the paired passage or the dual passage as we call it as. That's how the 5 passages are divided. Also, in addition to this, there will always be at least 2 passages which will incorporate infographics. So they will have some sort of graph, charts, pie charts, right, which the student will have to read and understand. So at least 2 passages. Mostly it's easy that if they are from the science section, but they could be from history or US world literature as well. So those 2 infographic passages could be one of these 5 passages where you have to read the data, interpret the data, and then answer the question. Now, this is all about the passages. Now, what about the questions, right? So reading section, largely, if I have to broadly categorize it, I could actually categorize them into two broader categories. The first one is what we call as big picture questions, which is like main idea of the passage, right? You have read through the entire passage. What is it talking about? What's the main idea behind it, right? And the second could be smaller details, which could be related to one para, two para, or three para, but not the entire passage, right? That's the difference. That's the two broader categories. Now, if I look at big picture kind of questions, now what are the categories of questions that will fall under big picture? So obviously big picture is one. P1, P2 relationship, which is nothing but paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, relationship between the two paragraphs. So there would be some question wherein you have to have the knowledge of both the paragraph to answer that question. Support and undermine claim could be a big picture, could be a smaller in detail question. However, the other categories, which is something like vocab in context, right? So pre 2015, there used to be a lot of vocabulary, right? You would have seen your kids going through 300, 3000 word list where they had to memorize those words, right? Because they were directly testing the grammar, the vocabulary. Whereas now SAT has changed that, and there is no direct vocabulary. There is something called vocab in context. Now, how does that work? They will give you a line. In that line, there would be a word. So they will underline that word and say, hey, can you replace this word with any of these four words, right? So you have to find out a word which is similar in the meaning, right? So based on the context, you can answer that question, and it's not just purely out of the memory, right? So that's what vocab in context are. Literal comprehension, as the name suggests, pretty much the literal meaning of the comprehension. Inference, where you're inferring between the, what do you infer from a passage or a para? Infographic question, as I've already mentioned. Function is basically why was it written? What was the objective behind it? So that's the function, and that's largely again a big picture question, right? Support undermining claim, again a minute detail. It could be one single para. Tone and attitude questions, which is again very specific, could be sometimes specific to particular para or could be about the big picture as well. So these are different question types that one has to tackle while they are doing the reading section. Now, if you look at the entire thing, it's really, really important for one to start early in terms of the reading section. My recommendation is please start reading Wall Street Journal, Washington Post article. It could be one article a day, doesn't matter. But please start reading those articles. The earlier you start, the better it is. And there are a lot of reasoning. I'll walk you through the webinar as well. Now with this, let me jump on to the next section, which is the writing section. There are a total of 44 questions, and you have 35 minutes. And again, there are 4 passages here. Please don't get confused with the name. It says writing section, but the child is not writing anything. You're not supposed to write anything. It's basically where you have 4 passages. Every passages will have 11 questions. They would have underlined few things, and you have to rectify those errors, right? That's what the writing section was all about. So please don't get confused that there is any writing that the one has to do. There's no writing that you have to do. You only have to correct the writing which is being already done by the author, right? If you look at it, you have only about 48 seconds to answer one question. So this is much more time intensive than the reading section. And it's one of the scoring section as well. We generally want students to do really well in the writing section because everyone else is also doing well there. So it's important for one to really do well in the writing section. Now, if I look at individual question type, now in the writing section, you probably can question that in the reading, we had those 3 different categories of passages, right? But in writing, there is no such category divide. You could have all science passage, it could be a history, it could be a humanities passage. So there is nothing fixed as such in terms of the passage type. What is fixed is how they're testing you and what are the kind of questions that you can expect. When you actually get your SAT report or even a PSAT report, right? Some of you would have written the PSAT, you would see they give scores called expression of ideas 10 out of 15 or 12 out of 15. Standard English convention 13 out of 15, 14 out of 15. So these are the 2 sub scores that you get when you are basically doing your test and when you get your test report. So these are 2 broader categories in which the SAT writing section is divided. Standard English convention is pretty straightforward. Basically, anything which is related to your grammar rule, punctuation, subject-verb agreement, or anything, right? On the other hand, if you look at expression of ideas, it again depends on development, organization, your language usage. Now, if you see, though the section is called as writing section, expression of ideas still depends on your understanding of the passage. And hence we say that reading again becomes really important, though it's a writing section, but there is still at least about 30 to 35% questions, which are still coming back from the reading section again. For example, if I look at the individual question types here, so this is how I can broadly divide the categories. The first one, as I said, expression of ideas. And these are three broader categories. The first one is insert and delete questions. Now, what are these? So they would probably give you a line and say, hey, where can you insert this line in this para? So obviously you have to have a clear understanding of the entire paragraph. If you don't have the correct flow, you will not be able to put in this correctly, right? That's one category. You have sentence and paragraph order. So you need to understand what's the order of the paragraph or the sentence, again, to insert a sentence in between. Redundancy and wordiness, again, if you don't understand the flow of the para or the passage, you will not be answered that correctly. So these are few categories which are purely based on your understanding of the passage. And hence, it's important for one to also understand the passage, though it might be a writing section. And that's where a lot of kids lose marks. Right? It's genuinely important to make sure that you are, again, going back to the same point, start reading. That's the key component. Then second, standard English conventions, you have diction, sentence structure, transition, verb tense, pronoun, parallelism, infographics, punctuation. These are some things which we all keep looking at, and we must be thinking, hey, I mean, we have been doing it since grade 6th onwards, right? But there are a few challenges to it, right? Though it might look very simple on paper, but the challenges are this, right? So what happens, we as an individual or as humans when we are talking, we kind of ignore the mistakes that we are doing, right? Which is, for example, we say, let me take an example. Okay, he's taller than me, right? And most of us will say that's correct, right? But do you think it's correct? And do you guys have any answer? What is the mistake in this? Let me help you guys. There is a mistake in this sentence, right? He's taller than me. I'll help you out. The correct answer is he's taller than I, right? It's the correct pronoun which is missing here, right? And these are the small things that we kind of ignore when we are doing a regular English. And hence it's important to go back, relook at those rules, right? That's one reason. Second reason is when we are doing our regular school English, or even when we are communicating to each other, I think what we're using is British English, right? Whereas if you look at the SAT, they are testing you on American English. There are few rules which are different there. For example, so I will say, we cater to SAT, ACT, and subject SAT, but that's wrong as per American English. It should be SAT, ACT, and subject SAT. So there is a comma before and as well. Now that's the difference, right? And if you remember, when I was doing the reading section, I said students should start reading articles from Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, all are US-based organization again, right? That was the reason behind it. When they start reading those articles, they'll be able to relate to it much more, and they will start looking at these differences between an American grammar and a British English, right? So though it all looks very straightforward, saying, hey, I mean, these are grammar rules. I mean, we have been doing this, Brendan Martin, why do we need anything, right? So that's the difference where I think organization like Reviser or someone else can help you to provide additional support. And again, I think the bottom line is start reading every day, one article a day. Trust me, that's the only way you can get those 800 and 800 in English. Otherwise, it's an Herculean task to improve the reading section. With that, let me jump onto the math section, which is favorite for most of the Asian kids. We have a total of 58 questions and a total of 80 minutes. Now this math section is further divided into two broad categories. One is a calculator section, and then there is another one which is a no calculator section. Now in the calculator section, there are total of 20 questions, out of which there are 15 MCQ questions, which are multiple choice questions. And there are 5 grid in response questions. Now, what are these grid in response questions? They are nothing but basically you will not be given an answer choice. Unlike in reading and writing where you had 4 answer options and you have to find the one, right? So there is still a 25% chance of you getting a correct answer even if you guess, right? Because there's no negative marking. But here in grid in response, you have to write down your answer. For example, your answer could be 4.3, so you have to write it down, or 4/3, you have to write it down, or 4003, you have to write it down, right? So you have to basically write down your answer. So you cannot do any guesswork there. That makes it slightly difficult. And you have a total of 25 minutes to solve these 20 questions. So on an average, you have about 1 minute, 15 seconds. So roughly about 75 seconds in total to do the no calculator section. Sorry, there's a mistake on the slide. This is the no calculator section. On the calculator section, which is the 4th section, is where you have a total of 38 questions, and there are a total of 30 MCQ based questions, and there are 8 grid in response questions. In total, you have 55 minutes to solve these 38 questions. So average time per question is again similar, 1 minute, 20 seconds. There's not much of a difference apart from the difference that one is a no calculator and another one is a calculator section. Now that's another thing. I think probably next month when we are doing an ACT webinar or next month, you will see a difference between an SAT and ACT. That's the main difference, that you cannot use calculator in one of the section. Here in ACT, you could use it all throughout your math section. Now, let me deep dive into these sections. Now, SAT math section basically tests you on 4 broader categories, right? Now, what are these categories? There's something called heart of algebra, and these are SAT related terminologies. Honestly speaking, they're pretty confusing, but because they have it, we have to kind of use it. The first one is heart of algebra. They generally have about 19 to 20 questions, which comes from heart of algebra out of 58 questions, which is quite a bit. And what does this entails? So you will have all the questions which are related to linear equations, inequalities, functions, and graphs. Anything which is linear will get covered here. Even in the function, only the linear functions will get covered here. The second broader category is Passport to Advanced Maths, which largely cater to the nonlinear expressions, which is something like exponential functions, quadratic functions, right? So anything which is nonlinear get covered in the Passport to Advanced Maths. And you have roughly, again, about 17 questions from this section. The third one is problem solving and data analysis. Again, ballpark, another 16 questions. Now, this is one of those category which is testing your data interpretation skills, right? So ratio, rates, proportion, how can you read the pie chart, the graph, the histogram, the bar charts, the bar graphs. So all of that is basically being tested in problem solving and data analysis section. And then you have one more additional section, which is called additional topics in maths, a very small part of your entire SAT, but then every question counts here. 6 questions, which comes from this category and pretty decided: geometry, trigonometry, and complex number. These are the 3 topics which are being included in this. Largely, you will see 2 to 3 questions from trigonometry and 1 or 2 from geometry and 1 from complex number, right? Mostly you will not see additional topics in maths in the no calculator section. You will only see this in the calculator section. However, when you get a report, your SAT test report back, you get 3 subscores from there. One is heart of algebra, second one is Passport to Advanced Math, and third one is problem solving and data analysis. What they do is they somehow basically take the score and convert it out on a point of 15 points and say how well have you performed on a point of 15, on a scale of 15 in heart of algebra. So let's say 14 on 15, Passport to Advanced Math 13 on 15, problem solving and data analysis 12 on 15, right? So that's how you read the report. If you see an SAT or a PSAT report, I'm just trying to help you there. How can you read that report, right? But they will never give you something called additional topics in maths. No idea why, but they don't add that in the 15 section. Now, the next section, which is your SAT essay section. And this is an optional component, as I have mentioned it in the beginning, but we strongly recommend everyone to please go ahead and write the essay as well. There are 2-3 main reasons behind it. One is, when you're writing the SAT, when you're attempting the SAT, which is, let's say, towards the last quarter of your grade 10th or beginning of grade 11, you're not sure what colleges you're applying for, right? And hence, you don't know whether that college requires you to do an SAT with essay or without essay. So just to be on the safer side, please do it with the essay. Secondly, if later on you figured out that you have to do it with the essay, there is no option that you could just do the essay component. You have to do the entire test again. So that's the second reason. Third reason, which is kind of a logical reason for me, it's not affecting your 1600 score, right? It's towards the end of the exam. So even if for some reason you don't do well in the essay section, it's completely fine, right? It's not part of your 1600 any which ways, right? And it's towards the end. If it was in the beginning, then there is a lot of thought process that should go behind it, that, hey, after 50 minutes, this child would be tired. So does it make sense to do an essay or not? But if it's towards the end, I mean, my logical choice is, why not? Let's go ahead and do it, irrespective of what scores you get, right? Now, let me see what this essay section is about. Is it like, write an essay on XYZ? Not really. What you need to do is you have to read a passage again. So again, reading, which I've been saying probably half of the time in this entire webinar. So they have to read the passage, explain how the author is building an argument, and they have to support their explanation by using the evidence from the passage itself. That's the key component here, which is again different from the ACT. When we talk about the ACT, you have, or you can only use the evidence which are from the passage itself. You cannot take the evidence or the examples from outside the passage. Okay. Now, how is it being evaluated, right? So they are testing 3 components here: reading, writing, and analysis. Now, what is reading again? Reading basically tests and shows how well have you understood the passage. Have you understood the central idea, the main idea, the big picture of the passage, right? So that is being tested upon. Then analysis, how well have you understood how the author is building an argument, right? Are you able to figure out the evidence from the passage which is supporting or undermining the claims of the author? That's the analysis component. Third is writing, which is just like, I mean, how well have you crafted your essay? Does it have a body? Does it have good beginning? Does it have an end, conclusion? I mean, what about the spelling mistakes, the grammar, standard English conventions are being followed? Are you using rhetorical strategies, similes, and what are the different styles that you have used? So that is being tested in the writing part. Now, these are the 3 components that you should keep in mind when you're preparing for your essay section. And how it finally gets evaluated on paper. So there are 2 people who will read your essay and score your essay. Because it's being done manually, you will not get your SAT score along with your regular score. So for example, let's say you write an SAT test today. Within 2 weeks, you will have your SAT score out of 1600. But to get your essay score out of 24, you'll have to wait almost a month, because it's being done manually. So there are 2 people who will read your essay. They will evaluate you on 3 parameters: reading, writing, and analysis, and give you anything between 1 to 4 points. And these 2 scores will get added finally. So it will become out of anywhere between 2 to 8 in each of these individual categories. And hence it becomes anywhere between 6 to 24. That's where the minimum is 6 and maximum is 24. There is no composite SAT score and there are no percentiles. So they don't, recently, this is a very recent change that they have stopped giving out percentiles for the essay. So that's how you get your essay scores. But obviously, as I said, it takes some time for you to get your essay scores back, right? So that's largely about the essay section. Now, let me move on to the next thing: how to ace the SAT test. There is no magic. It's pure practice, hard work. There are a few techniques and strategies which one has to adopt for any standardized test per se, because they are different from your regular school exam, right? So you have to be smart enough that you have to, let's say, get the low hanging fruits first, right? So those are small techniques that you obviously have to adopt. But at the same point of time, there's no magic pill that I could get and say, hey, take this and you're going to get 750 tomorrow and take another one. Unlike Corona, where you have the 2 shots, there is no shots here, unfortunately, yet. So the only thing, as I've been repeating throughout this webinar, the first thing is build strong reading habits. Make sure that the child is reading at least an article a day. And if you can do it, please see if these articles could be from Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. On top of it, make sure they are reading it from different genres, not just fiction or let's say autobiography or something. Make sure that they're reading books which are from different genres, because you have seen that SAT is testing you on different genres. They don't want you to be just a single focus person, right? That's one thing. Secondly, start reading about US history. That's what they are testing you on, right? It could be through movies or something, but it's good if you already have that information. You would be really quick there. And if you save some time in one passage, you could actually use that time in another passage. And trust me, every minute counts. Like ask any student who have given the SAT, every second counts for them. Second, start early. Again, start early is really, really important. Start at the right time. And ideal case scenario is beginning of 10th, start off, right? With the target saying you want to finish your first attempt of SAT by end of grade 10 or in the first quarter of grade 11. There are 2 reasons for doing that. When you get into grade 11, right, irrespective of what curriculum you do, whether it's CBSE, IG, IB, A levels, doesn't matter. Between 10th grade to 11th grade, there is at least 10x jump in terms of the curriculum. So the amount of time commitment that the child has been putting in grade 10 has to increase by at least 4x, 5x in the IB curriculum, right? And on top of it, when you add SAT in addition to what he's doing, it kind of becomes a lot for the child, right? So it's always advisable to please start early. As you probably would have seen, there is no content which is in grade 11. Let's say if some people think that, hey, if the child is doing grade 11, maybe it would help because they would have done most of the content. It doesn't really help, because if you see on paper, all of this content is something that they have already covered by grade 10, right? So they ideally don't need anything else. They could go and write test tomorrow, right? But obviously that's not the case because of different things that we have discussed. So please start well ahead on time. Third, avoid silly mistakes. Again, cannot emphasize more on this. And I'll tell you one of the reasons for this, right? So how the scaling happens. So I've shown you the number of questions and the time, right? For example, out of 58 questions in math, if you get a 57, what is your score out of 800? Now, how is that decided? That probably is one question, right? So remember, that is decided based on the bell curve. And most of you guys probably are aware that bell curve is basically decided based on how others are performing. It's basically crafted based on everyone's performance, right? And hence, this conversion of score from a 57 to 800 score, from which we call as raw score to a composite score, can vary from test to test. For example, let's say in December SAT, 57 out of 58 could fetch you 790 out of 800. In March, for example, 57 out of 58 can fetch you 780. In May, 57 out of 58 can fetch you 770 out of 800. So one mistake can sometimes cost you 30 points as well. So I'm taking example up until 30 points because that I have seen in the last 5 years. That's the highest that one has lost if you have done one mistake, right? In PSAT, it could be much higher. I have seen even 50-point jump, right? So that means there is no margin of error. You cannot afford to do any silly mistakes if you're trying to get a high score in the 99 percentile, which is 1500 plus score. In that case, you cannot afford to do any silly mistakes. Proper planning, very, very, very important again. And that's part of starting early. If you start early, the plan will fall into place. But the important point to note here is when you're doing your planning, it's not just about your prep planning, it's also about your test date planning. Pick a date which is wherein your school activities are not very intensive. Right? You don't want to be on the two boats where you're, let's say, writing school half-yearly exam and also doing this, right? So you have to find a fine balance between the two, where you have right amount of time for doing your SAT prep and also managing your school, right? Because both has to go hand in hand. Next, practice tests at home under time condition to avoid any shocks during that actual exam day. Yes. Now this is towards the end, obviously. And one thing which has been added this year is wearing mask, right? We all, so what we do and what we recommend our kids is when you're taking a full test, try and do it in the morning, first half of the day. Start at 8:30 in the morning, right? Because that's how the actual exam will be, right? So you want your brain to work in the same way, right? It's more like building a mental stamina and training your muscle memory, right? Second, wear mask. Wear mask when you're writing the exam, because that's exactly what you have to do in the final exam, right? Similarly, try and simulate the same environment. For example, don't fill the bubble sheet with pen, fill the bubble sheet with pencil, because that's what you have to do in the final exam, right? So these are small things. So they might seem very silly at this point, but trust me, all of this is coming from some bad experiences in the past, right? So there was some student who filled it with pen. They have not gotten their score, and it's been 2 months since the SAT happened, right? So all of this is coming from some experience. There was another child who was not comfortable wearing mask in the exam hall, so he had to like literally come out of the exam hall in between, right? So try and simulate the same exam environment. Sit at a quiet place. Try and do it in the early morning. Wear mask, or hopefully tomorrow if there's something else, then do that, right? So yeah, these are few techniques that one should do, which will help you to finally become better at it. Yeah. So that's largely about the SAT. I would, though I know we have already at 10:40, I would quickly take you through the PSAT. PSAT is nothing but a shortened and the simplified version of the SAT. Right. And if there are a lot of requests, we could have a separate session on the PSAT, but PSAT is pretty much like an SAT. In terms of content, there is no difference at all. It's just a subset of an SAT, right? It's usually taken in grade 9 and grade 10. There are some kids who will also write it in grade 11. This is an important point here. If you're a US citizen, you should write your PSAT in grade 11, because that's also considered as NMSQT, which is National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So that's really, really important if in case you're in grade 11 and you're a US citizen. Otherwise, it's just another practice test. Few differences between the PSAT, SAT is no essay in PSAT, so you don't have to write the essay. PSATs are not used by college admission, so it's just a practice test. And some people write PSAT because they're looking for summer schools or scholarships for the summer school. Then you can write the PSAT. And here is the distribution. So if you look at it, there are all the same sections: reading, writing, maths no calculator, maths calculator. The only thing is you have either less number of questions and at the same time less time to do those questions. So in totality, if you look at PSAT, there are 139 questions as opposed to 155 in SAT. And there's total of 2 hours 45-minute time as opposed to 3 hours 50-minute in SAT. PSAT, the highest score is 1520 as opposed to 1600 in the SAT. So that's the difference in terms of time, number of questions, and the scoring, right? Next, if we look at the important part, right? This is where I want to probably emphasize on planning, right? What is the right time to do different stuff? I know there are few terms here which might be kind of new for you, but this slide we are going to use every time we will have the webinar, whether it's an AP webinar, whether it's a subject SAT webinar, whether it's an ACT webinar. So I will only talk about the SAT timeline right now, because a lot of you might get confused with AP and subject side if in case you're not aware of those. So if you look at it, grade 9, start your PSAT prep if you want to do that. And grade 10th, write your SAT. In grade 10, start your PSAT prep as well, right here. So you should start your SAT prep while you are in grade 10th. Some kids, if you are coming from CBSE and ICSE background, if you want to start just with math, just with English component, that's also fine, right? Scattered it across maybe over a period of 10-12 months, right? And do the actual exam, write your SAT, AST in grade 10 towards the end of grade 10, right? Now, when I talk about that, it could be, let's say, in the last quarter or last couple of months of your grade 10th, or right in the beginning of grade 11. And obviously these timelines will vary slightly depending on which curriculum you are coming from. Feel free to set up a one-on-one consultation session. It's a complimentary session with Rishi. So we will be sharing a link with all of you towards the end. Feel free to set up a one-on-one consultation. Depending on individual case-by-case basis, we can sit with you and help you plan your timelines well. Right? Because this is general in terms of which curriculum, if you're coming from, the things might change because CBSE exams would be, obviously this year they are in May, June, which is similar to your IG and IB exams. But unless, I mean, in general, they are in the March, right? So for them, the summer break, right after the 10th grade, that's the right time, but they should have started preparing early, right? Otherwise it will basically overlap with their grade 11. So that's the time. If in case you have not started in grade 10, you're in grade 11, start as soon as possible, right? The only thing is it will be kind of cumbersome because you are already doing your grade 11 and on top of it you're doing this, so it will be a difficult task, but then you don't have an option, honestly, right? So that's sorry, just a second. Yes. Next is colleges in India which are accepting SAT scores. So I get this question a lot of time, right? Because we all want to have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C there, right? So a lot of people ask, hey, I'm not sure about the US right now, but at the same point of time, I want to keep the option open. So is there any other place where I could use this score? And the answer is yes, a big yes now. So College Board, which is the organization that conduct SAT, they have recently started their second office in India, and they're going really aggressive, tying up with the universities. And if you see, there are some of the top universities here, like Ashoka University, Azim Premji, Flame, Kriya, Manav Rachna, Shivnadar, Plaksha. So all these universities which are mentioned here, they accept SAT scores for their undergrad degree program, which means you don't have to write individual exam for each of these universities. You obviously will have to fill the form, but you don't have to write the exam. You can submit your SAT scores for any of these universities. In addition to these universities, there are 20 other universities which will not accept SAT scores for all of them, but they will accept the SAT score for some specific program. For example, Narsi Monji accepts it for a particular program. For example, VIT accepts it for a particular program, and so on and so forth. Right? There's a link at the bottom. We'll try and share this link as well with all of you, probably post this webinar. You could visit here, see the list of colleges which are accepting SAT scores in India. That could act as a plan B option. Now, with that, let me quickly walk you through the pedagogy that we use at Revisor, and I'll probably quickly take about 2 to 3 minutes. At Revisor, we largely divide. So we are a very process-oriented company. That's one thing. We divide our entire pedagogy in 4 main phases. The first phase is phase 0, which is diagnostic test, which is again a complementary part. It doesn't matter whether you are part of program or not, you could still come and take a diagnostic test. We recommend taking a diagnostic test, 1 each for SAT and for ACT both, just to figure out which is the best suited test for you. Like I told about Anjali, there are other students who have figured out which is the best test for them, and they would go ahead and write 1 test. So that's one thing. So you get a complimentary test there. We will give you a detailed report, and there'll be a one-on-one consultation session. All of that is complimentary, irrespective of whether you sign up or not. Then there is phase 1, which is largely about classroom training, wherein you are doing the concept mastery. There's roughly about 50 hours of classes for maths, reading, writing, and essay component. And in addition to that, there's roughly about 50 hours of assignments that you'll have to work on. Each class is largely planned for about 2.5 hours. There's a strong tracking mechanism. So we call it as score tracker that we use, which is to keep the parents, the child, the revisor team, and the revisor mentor, which is the student mentor, or everyone at the same page, right? So that is a strong tracking mechanism there, where the student have to update this score after every session. Then there is phase 2, which is largely about sectional test and customized practices. So there is a mentor which get assigned to every individual child to work with them individually, because we don't think that one size can fit all. So after phase 1, the program becomes an individual program, irrespective of how you sign up. So you have 1 test each for reading, writing, and math that you write. Based on that, the mentor will figure out what is the best recommendation, whether you should do more class, whether you should do test, whether you should do practice. So that will happen in phase 2. And post that, once you are comfortable with your speed and mastered the accuracy, we move to next phase, which is phase 3, which is largely about the full length mock test. And that's the part where you're doing your endurance mastery, right? So every student will write at least 15 to 20 mock tests before they write their final SAT or the ACT attempt. And again, the reason of writing that many tests is in the couple of tests, I think the childs are anyway kind of finding it difficult to manage because there is a lot of, 3 hours, 50 minutes, that's a long time, right? So students are not used to of sitting for that long. And hence, it's important to do this many tests. After every test, you get a detailed analysis report. You sit with your mentor. Just a second, there's some background noise. Okay, yeah, you sit with the mentor and then you do the self-analysis of the mistake, right? So that's how the entire program works. You can, we have both the option. You can opt for one-on-one program, which is one student is to one faculty in the phase 1. Phase 2, phase 3 is anyways customized to individual requirement, or you can group opt for our group training. So you have both the options. These are few modules that we have. The one that I've just explained you is SAT ACT full training, where you have classroom training, assignments, mentor support, sectional test, and full length test. There's something called SAT ACT study plan, where a lot of kids can prepare on their own. Khan Academy is a good resource to go and prepare on their own. So some kids are already preparing, they're doing well, but they need more resource. They need somebody to be guiding them and telling them, hey, you've done this, now do this, now do this, right? It's more of a support system. So if they're looking for something of that sort, SAT study plan is something that they can look at, wherein you get material, you get full length test, and you get the mentor access. You don't get any live classes. And then there is something called SAT ACT Lite. This is something that we have crafted for people who are already getting a 1450 kind of score. Now they just want to come and do test, right? They just want to mimic the same environment. And we have a proprietary software that we have developed in-house at Revisa, which gives a 20-page detailed report talking about what areas you have done well, what areas you need to work on. Some people come and opt for this program for that report as well, right? And obviously we provide you the answer explanation for each and every question. So that's another program. So these are different programs that we have. And then there are a lot of customizations which are possible around this, right? Feel free to set up a session with Rishi, as he mentioned in the beginning, a one-on-one consultation session, which is again complimentary, as I said, just to talk about it and discuss and plan out for every individual. From here on, I will probably pass it on to Rishi. I hope I was able to give you enough detail. I know I have taken a little bit extra time, but since all the participants have stayed, I am hoping it was a useful session. I think I'll pass it on to Rishi and then we'll take the questions, Rishi.
Sure, that sounds better. Thank you so much, Rajdeep, for all the insights and the experience of prepping and supporting students that you have had for the last 5 years. And dear parents, this is quickly to take you through the upcoming webinars. We wish to continue and support you in the journey of sharing knowledge and gaining knowledge for SAT, which has been completed today. As you can see, the next one that is coming up is high school planning and curriculum alignment with college planning. There are a lot of questions that should I take IB to go abroad? Is CBSE not sufficient, or is ICSE not sufficient? What if I am a pre-university student? Can I still go abroad? Or is it only sensible to go outside India for studying, STEM or technology-based courses, which is not the case. So all of these questions will be addressed. So please feel free to share this upcoming webinar link with your parent community and student community, ideally for grade 8 onwards in this particular webinar. And the next one that is coming up is on 13th of February, which we will have for subject SAT under the microscope, something similar to what you have witnessed today, but that will be deep diving into the subject SAT component of your application. After that, we have the next webinar on 27th of February, helping you save some money if possible, because after talking to 2,500 parents each, Rajdeep and I, so put together, we have discussed at least with 5,000 plus parents. One thing that we have come across is there is a lot of vacuum that has developed in terms of knowledge that there is no scholarship or very little available for undergraduate program, which is not the case. Parents are saving a lot of money with their undergraduate application as well if they plan early. What is the difference between scholarship, financial aid, and how to do budgeting if you're planning to study abroad? This webinar again can be shared with parents as early as grade 7th, 8th and onwards, because finance is one of the biggest decision-making factor in every parent and student's journey to study abroad. We wish to support you with this. And the next one is on 13th of March, ACT under the microscope, and something similar to what you have witnessed today, SAT under the microscope. We'll be doing something similar for ACT as well to help parents and students decide easily between SAT and ACT, which one should I take, which one am I more suitable for. So all of that will be addressed in that webinar. And 27th March, we are setting up a webinar or information session for education in USA, end-to-end understanding of the journey, starting from planning, timeline, finances, as well as the application process, and the rest of the program will be shared in that. And lastly, AP test under the microscope in the month of April, because the students who are targeting it in 2022 must start early if you're targeting anywhere between 2 to 3 AP tests. So these are our upcoming webinars. And I'm sure if you're interested in studying abroad, all of these components will be really helpful for you. We will begin with the Q&A section, and you can start asking questions. I can see already 3 of them parked. Let me see how much I can answer. The rest will be passed to Rajdeep, who is an expert with this. So for NRI students, do they need SAT scores for admission in India for both engineering and degree courses? So Anush, what I understand is there is a DASA quota, as we all know, under which NRI students can apply for really top tier universities in India, and they will require SAT scores. Predominantly subject SAT is given a little more weightage because they are individual 1-hour tests focusing on physics, chemistry, biology, math level 1 and level 2. So I would strongly suggest you to go through the DASA website. If you want the link, set up a Calendly appointment. I'll be happy to walk you through that process. I hope that addresses your question. The next one is by Siddharth. Will you be sharing a link to the slide deck and a recording of this webinar? Absolutely. We'd be really happy to share the link of the YouTube with you all. We have done so in the previous webinar as well that we conducted in the month of December, which was overall understanding the standardized tests like SAT, ACT, subject SAT. So a similar link will be shared with you all and you can take it up. The next question was, do you need SAT for NUS Singapore? As far as my knowledge goes, until 2020, yes, they did consider SAT for NUS Singapore. In fact, NUS Singapore requirements are really high, in sometimes even succeeds or supersedes US SAT requirements. So I have interacted with 20 plus counselors, and one of them has clearly mentioned that Singapore is so demanding that it's not just about getting SAT above 1550, 1570. You should also have a great academic score. So if you're looking for Singapore, then you require some serious high SAT scores above 1550 at the least to even apply and not waste money. I thought DASA was scrapped. Yes, you are correct. DASA scheme was scrapped, but under 18 months it was reintroduced, and that information has not spread equally. So we are here and we are happy to help you with that information. Ms. Revati, I guess your question is addressed now. Please keep an eye out. If you're an NRI parent or a student, keep an eye out on the DASA link. Refresh it every quarter or every once in 6 months, and you will be updated with the latest happenings. So what are some of the reading resources that you would recommend? I guess Rajdeep has emphasized you must consider Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and such articles. So in a little lighter note, if it is boring, read it. And if it is from US, read it. So we usually stick to things that are exciting us, but when it comes to articles, if it is boring article, please read it. And that is the only thing that will help you. I can see a lot of grade 9 parents and students attending this webinar. You are one of the lucky ones because you're starting this journey with a clean slate. As Rajdeep mentioned, even if once in 2 days you read an article, but ensure that it is from a US context, because irrespective of what our personal likings and preferences are, we are attempting a US-based test. So we should read what they write regularly. So also it would be useful to do SAT for Cambridge and Oxford. Also, it would be useful. Is that a question, Aditi, that will it help if you do SAT for Cambridge and Oxford? Yes, because all the applications, even in these top-notch universities, have a small area available where you can say, if you have taken any additional test like the SAT, please mention the test and the score. So if you have a great score of 1500, 1550 and above, you can mention it there and they will give due consideration. If a couple of applications are caught at the same level, and if you showcase a SAT score which is better, then yes, you may get a advantage during the application acceptance, sometimes even for scholarship. So you don't know how it will help you. I heard due to pandemic, colleges are thinking over SAT exam as testing requirement. How much is it relevant? So let me be honest, SATs were scraped only for the year 2020 applicants because the ones who were planning to take it in March, May, and August 2020 were not able to take, and that would have caused imbalance amongst the entire peer community of applicants. That is precisely the reason why SATs were scrapped only in 2020. However, 3 tests in the last 4 months have been conducted because October was done, November SAT subjects were done, December were completed successfully. In fact, they ran short of seats because of the pent-up demand, and we are trying to balance that with March, May, and the rest of the year. So please ensure that you get the requisite information to the college that you're applying to, and ensure that they are still requiring or not requiring SAT. So you have to decide that. Best get in touch with your counselor and work with them very closely. They will guide you better on this. I am an AS level student and I feel I have missed my window of giving the examinations in this academic year. Is it fine if I give my exams in A level? So Rajdeep, would you like to take this question?
Yes, definitely. Yes, you can do that. Though having said that, I don't think you have missed the timeline. There is March, there is May, there is August. So you definitely have, but yes, you have to take things pretty quickly from here on. Right. So I think Rishi has already posted the link for his Calendly invite. Feel free to block your time slot, talk to us, figure out, or do your research on your own, right? But I would say, irrespective of whether you do it with anywhere, but please do it now as soon as possible. But you definitely have at least 2 more attempts, 2 to 3 options wherein you can go ahead and write your SAT. So please don't get disheartened. You have time.
All right, thank you so much. So I've shared my Calendly link again. You can set up an appointment through that. And where are the extra practice resources apart from mandatory assignments available? So Bhumika, you have set up an appointment on my calendar. I can already see that. So I will get in touch with you and walk you through that portion of the question.
Bhumika, you are anyway signed up with us. So be in touch with your mentor. Your mentor will keep getting back to you. I know you have recently signed up. So don't worry. First, you have to go through the phase 1 and then we will get to the phase 2. So don't worry, your mentor will take care of everything.
Do you provide assistance to shortlist and or apply for US colleges? Okay, so every parent attending and the student attending this webinar is no, we are not a counseling company. We are conducting all this webinar information session and giveaway of knowledge just to ease your process as an add-on to being a part of Reviser family. We do not do any sort of shortlist or application. The best thing to do, if you are from a school where you have a counselor, get in touch with them and they will do this for you. If not, you can get yourself a high school counselor outside the school if you don't have one at the school. Get in touch with me and I can put you in touch with some of the counseling institutions available in India who've been in the business for over 10 years and they can guide you. So I can just point you in that direction as a personal assistance. What is the schedule of SAT exams through the year? Okay, thank you so much for that question. The upcoming SAT exams are in May. Of course, that is right around the corner. Sorry, March 2021 is the next one, and that is right around the corner, not recommended. The next one is May, June for subject SAT, August for general SAT, October, November for subject SAT, and December. So you have 6 opportunities available between now and the December of 2021. If you want to plan something, get in touch with me. I will be really happy to put together a plan for you. Yeah. Just a question, how to get in touch. in order to opt for a SAT prep program by Satviki. So Satviki, you can get in touch with me via the calendar link, or if you have registered for this webinar, then I have your email IDs and I will send you an email in which all the details will be mentioned. Thank you so much, Bhumika. Very nice of you, Baris. Thank you for sharing the important information. We are glad and happy to host this session for you. How do you get Reviser website access for student by Amit Doshi? We will get in touch with you and set up a Reviser website access for your student, and I will ensure that this is taken care of. What's the difference between general SAT and subject SAT? So general SAT tests you on 2 skills up to grade 10 level of difficulty. One is English and the other one is math. Whereas subject SAT has got deep dive testings in terms of physics, chemistry, and biology, as well as math level 1 and level 2 dedicated 1-hour tests. So both are serving a different purpose, and it depends on the application and the colleges that you're targeting. If you want to have more clarity, Arushi, you can set up an appointment and I will be happy to set a call. If not, you can also visit our previous YouTube video and you will get the same information from there.
Yes.
What is considered a good score on the essay? The good score is 24 on 24. And if I'm not wrong, you're a grade 9 parent, which means you should be targeting nothing less than 24, Ms. Hema. So please try to get 24. What is recommended?
But on the serious note, anything above 18 is a good score, Hema. No college will reject you based on your essay score for sure. That's for sure, right? So anything above 18 is a good score, safe score. But yeah, as Rishi said, the more you have, better are your chances. So yes.
So when it comes to a grade 9 or a grade 10, if you're a parent whose child is even now in grade 10 or entering grade 10, try to hit as high as possible, because the entry requirements are turning a little on the higher side, considering the ease of visa application starting this year onwards, and getting citizenship has also become a little relatively easier than it was in the last 1.5 decades. So the applicants are only going to increase, which means higher score requirements. So please keep up the tempo and try to get as much score as possible. What is recommended to take subject SAT? When is it recommended to take subject SAT? So other than the general SAT, you have 2 options to take subject SAT. As I mentioned, you have June and you have November. Other than that, you can take subject SAT any time of the year. But remember one thing, you can't take general SAT and subject SAT together, which means other than March, rest all the test dates like May, August, October, November, December, you can take subject SAT, but you can't take both of them together. So that's also.
And I would suggest to attend the next webinar. That's going to be a deep dive into subject SAT, because it might be just too much information if you try and mix the subject SAT in terms of, yeah, exactly. Right. So try and see if you can come in, join in the next month. That's going to be just about the subject SAT, and do help us to spread the word across to the student community. Drop in a message with the links and everything. Yeah.
Okay, I have a message from Ashima. Where is the link to sign up for meetings with you guys? I have reshared it in the post. I will send an email to all the registrants of this webinar, and you can set up a consultation with us. We will be happy to discuss your personalized study plan or a personalized testing plan with everybody attending this webinar. Also, we have a short giveaway for the attendees and registrants of this webinar. We are happy to conduct a free diagnostic test that can be taken online. An email will be sent to you with the link. You can create an account for yourself, take a diagnostic test, and you will realize where do you stand on the scale of 1600 in SAT or on the scale of 36 in terms of ACT. Last question before we sign off for the day. We have already stretched by 10 more minutes, so this is the last question. I'm in 11th grade and I'm doing IB. When do you think I should take the SAT? Ideally, you should take the SAT in May of 2021, because you're already in grade 11. And if you're targeting early deadline of 2021, then October 30th is your early deadline. And the regular deadline is 31st December. So
right. Just to add, Sadhika is our student. So Sadhika, do go forward and discuss it with our mentor. Right. I have discussed with your dad as well. So August is what we are planning for you. That's what we are looking out for as your first attempt, depending on the exam constraints and everything, because May is when you have your IBA finals, right? Otherwise, we would have gone ahead and done the May attempt. Yeah.
All right.
Great.
Thank you so much, everybody, for signing in this Saturday morning. Appreciate you staying till the end of the webinar and the session. We'll send you the links for the diagnostic and consultation appointment, as you can see on the screen. Apart from this, we'll be also sending you one email to register for the upcoming webinar. Thank you so much. You have a great weekend. Bye. Thank you, Rajdeep.
Hope it